Imagine the man your mum loves, the man she plans to marry, betrays her, gets another woman pregnant, and then dares to drive drunk through your neighbourhood like nothing happened. Well, we didn't just sit back and watch. We made sure he lost his job, his freedom, and the family he threw away. If you've ever wished karma would slam into someone who hurt you, smash that like button, because this is a story where justice hits harder than a freight train. When my parents' 25-year marriage exploded, I moved back in with my mum. She was grieving, exhausted, but then she met Chris. Chris was charming in that bad boy who turned his life around kind of way. Sure, he was a former inmate who did time for a DUI, but he made my mum laugh again, and after watching her cry every night through the divorce, I thought maybe this is what she needs. So me, my brother, and my sister all moved in with Mum and Chris. We were this weird little patched-together family. Chris and I even bonded over late-night video game marathons. For a while, things felt normal, until the day the FBI showed up. Chris went to the courthouse for a routine probation check, but he didn't come back. Hours later, we got a phone call. From Texas. Chris had been arrested. Turns out his family was neck-deep in gang and drug activity, and he was caught up in it. He agreed to testify against them in exchange for a shorter sentence and early release. Mum was devastated, but she stood by him. They spent months talking on the phone, planning a wedding for when he got out. When he finally came home, we all thought we'd get our happily ever after, but instead, the drinking started. At first, it was just a few beers after work. Then half a 24-pack a night. Chris was a mean drunk. He'd pick fights over nothing, slam doors, yell at my mum, curse at us. Never hit anyone, but his words cut deep. Mum defended him. He's stressed. The trial is hanging over his head. But after years of this, one night she'd had enough. Chris stumbled in, reeking of beer. Mom asked, "Have you been drinking?" He didn't even bother lying. "Get out," she said, voice steady. He tried to argue, but she stood her ground. Chris left to stay with a friend, and that's when the truth, the ugly, filthy truth, then came knocking. The next morning, we were boxing up Chris's stuff when there was a knock at the door. Standing there was Betty, one of Chris's co-workers.
Someone I went to high school with. She looked nervous,
glancing over her shoulder like she was being watched. "I need to talk to your mum," she said. We sat Mum down, and Betty told her everything. Chris had been cheating on Mum with a woman named Darla. They weren't just sneaking around, they were doing it at work, in the restaurant during business hours. Chris had threatened to fire Betty if she ever told anyone. And the cherry on top? Darla was pregnant. Mum's face went white, then it went red. She didn't cry. She didn't scream, she just said, "Get every single thing of his out of this house." We dumped his clothes, his console, his precious collectibles and all of it, in the alley behind our house. When Chris called, Mom confronted him. He didn't deny a thing. In fact, he told her he was happy Darla was pregnant, because now he'd finally have a real family. That was it. That was the moment we stopped waiting for karma. We decided to be karma. Step 1. His job. Chris was the manager at Dairy Queen, which, luckily, was owned by a good friend of ours. We told the owner everything. The cheating, the threats, the fact that Chris was using the restaurant as his personal motel. Chris was fired. Betty, the woman he tried to silence, got promoted. But we weren't done. Chris moved in with Darla about an hour away and got another job at a different DQ, so we made another call. It took a while, but eventually he was fired from that job too. Now he had no income, no home, and a pregnant girlfriend. You'd think he'd leave us alone, right? Wrong. Chris started driving through our neighbourhood at night, which was strange, because Chris didn't have a driver's license. His DUI probation meant he couldn't legally drive, so we tipped off the police. Weeks later, we got the call. Chris had been pulled over, drunk, driving Darla's car. He was arrested on the spot, but it gets better. When the police searched the home he was staying in, they found several guns, which, as a convicted felon, he wasn't even allowed to touch. More charges. More jail time. By the time he finished serving that sentence, it was just in time to be hauled back to Texas for the trial against his family. Chris's son was born while he was in prison. Darla, realizing who she'd tied herself to, left him, and from behind bars, Chris started writing my mum these pathetic, rambling letters, half apology, half blaming her for ruining his life. Mum didn't even read them. She just burned them. We moved out of state, bought a new house, started over. Today Chris is out of prison, living in Kansas, still fighting child support lawsuits. Mum, she has a new boyfriend who treats her right. We don't just feel justice was served, we served it ourselves, ice cold. Looking back, I don't regret a thing. Chris threw away a good woman and a good family, and we just made sure the world knew who he really was. Sometimes karma needs a little push, and we were more than happy to give it one. What about you? What's the most satisfying revenge you've ever seen? Drop it in the comments. I read everyone. And if you love watching karma in action, hit subscribe. There's plenty more where this came from.